Hey, what is going on, guys? Royale Season 6 has arrived, and with it, a whole bunch of new changes to try out. There's the floating island, there's the quad crashes, there's, the six-shooter, all sorts of stuff like that. But because it's also released after OG mode, there's a bunch of other changes that you might not expect to come just with a normal Season 6 update. Some things from OG mode have carried into this, some haven't, so it creates an interesting dynamic there. And there's also some weird situations where certain weapons do double damage, and double shotgun is in fact possible. So in today's video, we're going to discuss all that. We'll talk about the overall loot pool, the quad launcher, which is kind of broken right now, the possibility of double shotgun, where the zombies are and how useful they can be to you, and then finally the overall meta. Okay, let's start out with the overall loot pool. So in Rewind Royale Season 1 through 5, all of the weapons inherited their present day stats, which meant that a lot of them play differently and the meta wasn't exactly the same as it was in historical Season 1 through 5. However, now there is the introduction of OG guns. So you have the OG pump and the OG burst. And technically, the OG burst is pretty close to how it was historically. It's a bit more accurate, though. The OG pump, though, as I've talked about in other videos about OG mode specifically, it's not historical in its current state. It's just a mismatch of random season statistics, to be honest. But both of them are very competitive weapons, and they're definitely worth trying out. The OG revolver also does exist in creative, however, that does not exist, and there are quite a few non-historical items like the OG gray pump, drum gun. There's the shadow mode fish where you can eat the fish to go into the shadowstone mode temporarily, and also the throwable launch pads. Those shouldn't be in there, but they do exist. Okay, let's move on to the quad launcher, which the quad launcher, would be pretty ordinarily do 80, 84 damage, solid weapon, pretty competitive with the RPG, you can go back and forth. However, it seems like there's been a mistake, and this isn't the fault of Rewind Royale devs, this is Epic. It does double damage, so it does 160 for purple and 168 for gold. Okay, this thing is extremely broken. 160 damage is enormous. It fires pretty quickly for an explosive, so you can be doing huge damage. Overall, it's a very competitive weapon and pretty much a mandatory carry. If you can get in a situation where you see an opportunity to hit your enemy with splash and do 160 damage, that'll be huge. So highly recommend you try out this weapon. It is extremely broken in its current state. Next, let's talk about double pump / double shotgun. So double shotgun is possible. However, it only works if you fire the OG pump first. What do I mean by this? If you fire the OG pump and switch to any other shotgun, OG or not, you will not have a shotgun delay. So you can do OG pump to OG pump to double barrel, OG pump to heavy. Any of those combos will work. You can't do things like double heavy, though, as if you fire any shotgun that's not the OG pump, you will get the delay. So this means that, funnily enough, you can argue that the OG pump, the gray, green, and blue variants, are better than the purple and gold spaz because they're not OG shotguns. It's very weird the way that works, and it creates a very weird situation. So what I would say is, if you can find at least one OG pump and run that with another shotgun, that's going to be really powerful. Variety of combos to try. I find pump double barrel, pump plus spaz, or double OG pump or OG pump plus heavy. They all kind of work. You can try what you like, but I would recommend using double shotgun, as double shotgun is very effective. And the only really good SMG is the gold, purple and gold P90 variants. Anything else, drum gun, centered SMG, I just don't think are that good. So I definitely think you should try out double shotgun. It's pretty funny to use it in Season 6. Okay, next, let's talk about the zombies or cube monsters. They only exist in the corrupted zones and around Loot Lake. And in addition to that, I find that they just don't swarm up as much. They can actually be helpful, as you can farm them to get some free shields. But I tend to notice that you're not really taking much damage from them because they're not all over the place. They're not everywhere. There's not a huge amount of them. Sometimes they can fall under the map in some limited circumstances. So overall, I don't really mind them, honestly. They're in limited zones. If you need some free shields, go ahead. You might want to grab them and get the shields. Finally, let's talk about the overall weapon meta. So in Rewind Royale Season 5, I think the meta was pretty good. This season, it's a very strange situation. If we look at the shotguns, OG pump is overall the best shotgun because it allows you to use double shotgun with another shotgun or another OG pump. There honestly are quite a few viable options, you could argue. Like, you can try things like pump double barrel, actually can be pretty deadly. You could do pump spaz. I think the meta actually is pretty interesting because of the double shotgun situation. but it's just it's very strange as you're limited. You can't use every possible combo. So while it is messed up, I actually don't mind the shotgun meta in its current state. The AR meta is very strange, where you could argue the OG lower tier burst rifles are better than the upper tier FAMAS ones because it's a triple burst instead of a two burst. That's debatable, but something to keep in mind there. Do keep in mind that things like the OG burst are very competitive even against like the Scar, because the OG burst is buffed relative to historical because it has less bloom, but the Scar has been nerfed in so many ways. It's very interesting that the OG burst is arguably the best AR. I wouldn't say it's outright the best, but it is an arguable best option. SMGs remain pretty similar, where the purple and gold variants are quite good. The lower tier SMGs and the drum gun are just okay. For snipers, the only really important thing to note is that the semi-auto has been vaulted. In earlier seasons in Rewind Royale, the semi-auto was an absolute menace, doing over 100 base damage. However, because it's not there, not really an issue. Pistols are all kind of meh, and structure destroyers is a very weird situation where the grenade launch and the quad launch are extremely broken. I would say the best option is the quad launch because it does double damage, then the grenade launch, and then the RPG. But all three of them are solid, but definitely the quad and grenade launch I think are a step up. They're very powerful. And also do note the minigun is still a solid option. It's just that the quad launch is extremely broken right now. But if the minigun's all that you can find for structure destroyers, not going to have any problems with that. Still a very solid weapon. Really, it's a structure destroyer heavy meta because there's so many really good structure destroyers, and they're honestly not all that rare. So you can find them pretty quickly, and they just do devastating damage. Yeah, with that, we'll have to see where Rewind Royale goes. I suspect at some point the double damage for the quad launch will get fixed. Hard to say. We'll see what happens here, but just keep in mind this is a very strange meta, and if you're trying to get into the mindset of playing the Season 6 historical meta, that might not work for you as explosives are more powerful and double shotgun is a thing. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.